This is your Thursday Daily Delivery. I'm your host, Michael Rand. Plenty to get to here in a little bit. I'll talk to Marcus Fuller, covers Gophers men's basketball for the Star Tribune, does a great job doing that. Got a recruiting update from Marcus. I think that'll be interesting for you guys to hear about, just, what's going on with the Gophers this offseason now that Ben Johnson can get on the road, see recruits, talk to them face-to-face, but also has plenty of work to do to remake this roster, not just this year where they lost so many guys in the transfer portal and brought in so many other guys in the transfer portal, but, really 2022 and beyond. What will he be able to do, with these incoming recruits next season and beyond? So good conversation with Marcus. Hope you enjoy that. We'll also talk a little bit of Twins here in just a moment, but first, what did I miss? Got to see Joe Mauer yesterday, Wednesday afternoon, at Target Field. He's putting on a home run derby for Gillette Children's Specialty Healthcare coming up here on June 15th. And I want to play that first for you, that conversation I had with Joe Mauer, because first of all, I thought it was interesting just to catch up with Joe. Hadn't talked to him for a while, especially since his retirement at the end of the 2018 season, just find out what he's up to. But also, I think it kind of frames nicely a discussion of the 2021 Twins. So let's go ahead and listen to that conversation I had with Joe Mauer. Happy to have Joe Mauer right now. Joe, you were crushing some out to right field here in support of your event coming up June 15th, benefiting Gillette Children's Home Run Derby. To remind the listeners who all is coming out for this.
Yeah, we got a great group of guys. Off the top of my head, we got Justin Morneau, Trevor Plouffe, Brian Dozier, Jim Thome, Garrett Jones, Joe Nathan, Glenn Perkins, Darren Mastriani, Brian Dunsing. You're going to kill me. I'm going to forget a couple. I'll have to send you the list just to make sure we get everybody in there. But, we got a good group of guys coming, and we got a couple non-baseball guys coming as well. So we're excited for them to come out and participate in this home run challenge.
It's like a Target Field All-Star game. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So crushing them out to right, how does it make you want to get back out and play? How you feeling about that?
Well, we were talking about it earlier. It's a different mentality for me. Obviously this is a home run challenge, and my sights are going to be set on that right field foul pole and trying to lift the ball a little bit. But it's fun anytime you grab the bat and get out there and take some swings. And obviously we're doing it. Everybody's coming together for a great cause and raising money and awareness for Gillette Children's Hospital here in St. Paul. So it should be a great day. I hope we get a day like this. It's beautiful out, and hopefully that wind's blowing a little bit out to right on that day.
I saw when you hopped in there, you still took a pitch. Is that just old habit? Was that just for fun?
No, it is. It's just something that I've done really forever. I mean, even before I was a professional, it gives me a good chance to kind of size the pitcher up and get my timing right. So I've always felt comfortable doing that. And as I got older, if I saw pitchers before, like Justin Verlander or something like that, I wasn't afraid to let it fly on that first pitch. But if I've never seen a guy before, you can 100% count that I'm taking the first pitch wherever it is.
I swung at the first one you threw me. I grounded it meekly. I got a couple, but I took one for the whole group here. I went right after you, and between the two of us, we hit 7 home runs. So I feel like that was pretty good. You hit 7, I hit none, but combined, that's still 7.
That's still a good day. A good day.
I'm just kind of curious. What do you? I know you were, aside from just being a professional athlete, you were pretty legendary for being competitive. What are you doing these days to scratch that competitive itch now that you're retired?
That's a great question. Golf. I'm playing a little bit of golf. Haven't played here in a little while, but it's funny. Out here grabbing a bat, you kind of get a little competitive doing that. It's I'm the girls' assistant soccer coach, the first graders there, so I'm trying to hold it back in there, because obviously I'm a coach. I can't do anything to impact the game, but no, it's been good. It's here and there, I get out there in the golf course, maybe get at my brothers, and whenever you have your brothers involved, it gets pretty competitive no matter what you're doing. But yeah, it's good to get the bat in your hand and try to swing and try to hit some homers.
My oldest is a 7-year-old girl too, so I kind of know where. Right? Yeah. She's a first grader right now. Talk to me about dad life. I like to ask athletes, retired ones, just like what's it like, now that you're home, essentially most of the time, all the time, you get to be around your kids. What's dad life like for Joe Mauer?
It's busy. It's busy, and when we had Chip, who's now 2.5, you had that third one. You're kind of moving to a zone defense. So moving and shaking. The girls keep me on my toes, obviously, the first graders. But yeah, it's been great. It's been busy, but I'm at a point in my life where I get an opportunity to spend that time with them, and that's what I'm trying to do, is just try to be around as much as I can and just enjoy them. Because they're ever changing so fast, and you just try to enjoy the time that you're in with them.
You watch much of this year's team?
This year I haven't been able to watch as much as I'd like. I keep track of the box scores and kind of how guys are doing. I have conversations with Morneau a little bit. He kind of gets me a little up to speed, but yeah, it's haven't been on top of it like I normally would or would like to.
They might be calling you pretty soon. They have a lot of injuries.
Well, that's the thing. That's a part of the game, and navigating a big league season. It's just into June. It's still early, but not that early.
Yeah.
But guys, you get healthy, and you try to gives opportunities to other guys to step up, and for the front office to get a good look at them. So. You try to take that negative and turn it into a positive, and hopefully the boys can get it going here.
Last thing for you, I heard you earlier talking about the group text you had going with some of these guys who were coming in. That must be kind of fun, right? Because I'm sure you guys do group text. Everybody has a group or two of friends where you get the trash talk going, stuff like that. But I can imagine you get a bunch of pro athletes on a group text. It gets pretty competitive. It
is, and it's guys like the group that we have coming. It's like we haven't missed a beat. Some of the guys I haven't been in the clubhouse with for over 10 years, but it's like it was yesterday, the last time you saw them. But guys are just having fun. We're excited to see each other. They're excited to come here and help support me, what I'm trying to do here in St. Paul with Gillette Children's. And, it's just a win-win. I hope we get a great day like this. I hope people come out, and it should be a lot of fun.
Joe, thanks so much. Congratulations on this cool event and everything that you're doing now post-career.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I liked a lot of that conversation with Joe Mauer. Hope you did too. One thing that struck me was when we were talking a little bit about the 2021 Twins team that he hasn't had a whole lot of chance to watch, because obviously he's got three small kids. I know the drill. I've got 3 small kids too. You don't always get to watch everything you want to watch, but he's keeping up with the team. He talks to Justin Morneau about them. He follows them in the box scores. And what he said about this year's team was it's early, but it's not that early because we're already into June now. And starting to remind me a little bit of the 2011 Twins a decade ago, where 2000 in 2010, 2009, they were coming off back-to-back AL Central titles. Much different teams in those years. They kind of loaded up in 2010 with some veterans for that first season at Target Field. But they get to this 2011 season, still high hopes. Can they make the World Series? And they fall flat. By the beginning of June, like Joe Mauer was talking about, they were 17-37. In 2011. You could tell at that point that this was probably not going to be in the cards. However, that team did rally, kind of like this Twins team started to play a little bit better. That team rallied to get all the way back to, I think, 44-49 at one point. I remember we were even having conversations about should they be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline, because they reached that record, in late July. Here, I'm going to find it just because I pulled it up early. I want to pull up what they have: 44-49, then 46-51 after a pair of wins over Cleveland. They were 5 games back in the division race on July 20th at 46-51, and we're like, should they go? Should we believe in this team? Should they go all in based on what we thought we knew about them at the beginning of the season? I wonder if this team is still going to tease us a little bit like that. I don't know. Maybe all the tease we were going to get was them starting to play slightly better a little while ago before they went and lost 2 out of 3 to Kansas City and then 2 out of 3 to Baltimore to fall even further back. More injuries, more disappointment. But the one really unfortunate parallel that's starting to creep into my head is the Jim Thome and Nelson Cruz comparison, because Thome was so good, so instrumental for the Twins in 2010, coming in as that veteran left-handed hitting presence, just clutch hitter, power guy, remade that lineup whenever he was in it, really picked up the slack, particularly in the latter half of 2010 when Justin Morneau was out with that concussion. 2011, time starts to catch up to him like it does for everybody. And he had an okay year. He still had an OPS over 800, but he ends up getting traded. And it just didn't work out to the same extent that it had, in 2010. And Thome is still beloved here. He's like Joe Mauer talked about. He's one of the guys coming back for this charity softball home run derby. But time started to catch up with him, and you could tell that year just wasn't quite the same player. And I'm starting to get that vibe from Nelson Cruz. I don't know if that's fair or not yet, if the sample size is too small. But Nelson Cruz hit a home run first day in May. Ever since then, that's a full month, basically from May 2nd to June 2nd. He's only hit 2 home runs. Batting average down at 227, striking out basically 1 every 4 plate appearances, OPS of 668. I mean, it's not a complete fall apart, but it's certainly not up to Nelson standards. I start to wonder when a player that old has a month stretch like that, is that the beginning of the end? That's not to say he's not going to hit a bunch more home runs this year. I'm just saying, are we at the end now of Nelson Cruz being dominant middle of the order batter? Are we at the beginning of the end for that sort of version of Nelson Cruz? And if so, what does that mean for this year's team? Decimated so much already by so many injuries. You saw Caleb Thielbar again in last night's game go out. You got so many other guys that have been hurt this year, guys underperforming. If Nelson Cruz starts to fade, that's just one more thing that you add on to this to say, I don't think this is coming back all the way. It just doesn't feel like this is the year. We'll see. Nelson Cruz has surprised us before. You've started to think maybe at other times, is this going to be, the beginning of the end? It was a couple of years ago where he had that wrist injury. You're like, and then all of a sudden he comes back hotter than ever and really carries him again down the stretch. So not writing him off, I don't think that would be fair. But a guy who gets to be this age, he's just like Jim Thome at that point. He's 40 years old. He'll be 41 at the beginning of July. That's not the point where a lot of guys are still doing this at this level. So one thing to keep an eye on this year is, especially as you watch down the stretch, is where is his career headed, and how does that compare to a decade ago with Jim Thome, and overall how does that compare to a team that 10 years ago did rally to at least get into the conversation by the end of July of whether they should be in the mix to add or subtract players. Ended up not adding players, and then they really plummeted those last 2 months, finished 63 and 99. So we'll see. Again, too early really to write off this season completely, but like Joe Mauer said, it's not that early anymore. It's June. When you've been through 2 full months of the season, you kind of know what you got, and what you got right now, especially after last night's 6-3 loss, which capped off a series loss at Baltimore, which had been going as poorly as any team in baseball. That doesn't feel good right now.
I'm Nyla Jean Myers, Senior Assistant Sports Editor at the Star Tribune. Thank you for listening to Strip Sports Daily Delivery. This work is made possible by our Star Tribune subscribers. For unlimited access to the articles mentioned in this podcast and our coverage of Minnesota sports from pros to preps, go to startribune.com/subscribe.
I'd like to welcome in Marcus Fuller to Daily Delivery. It's been a little while since we chatted, Marcus, because let's be honest, not a ton has happened in the college basketball world since I think the last time we talked might have been not long after the national title game, but starting to pick up recruiting wise here this week. Gopher wise, what can you tell me? What are some of the things we should be watching for now that Ben Johnson can kind of get on the road again? Doesn't have far to go in some cases, but can start having some face-to-face interaction with some of these targets they're going to try to bring in future years.
Yeah, well, it's good to be back talking Gopher basketball as always. Well, there's not a lot been going on maybe nationally, but for the Gophers, as a lot of fans know, the portal's been pretty brutal to their team from last season. They've lost 10, but they've also gained 10. So, we'll get into that a little bit later, what the roster looks like right now. But as far as recruiting, Ben Johnson and his staff, they've been focusing a lot on transfers. So this will be the first time, that they can really dig deep into the 2022 class. As everybody knows, we've all experienced it. The pandemic has changed, a lot of our lives, including basketball coaches and then the prospects. Last summer in July, they were able to go out and play AAU basketball without any coaches present, and not many fans either. So this summer is completely different. The NCAA lifted the dead period starting Tuesday, which was June 1st. It was the first time in, I want to say, over a year, 15 months, that coaches and players will be allowed to have in-person recruiting, meaning starting this week, the Gophers and college basketball coaches all across the country have started to have visits with recruits, recruiting targets. We talked about that earlier. For the most part, we're talking about seniors to be that'll be committing or signing in the fall. So we're talking about, in the state of Minnesota, Trey Holloman from Cretin-Derham Hall, point guard, outstanding talent. He also plays football. He visited on Tuesday. He was the first recruiting target to come in for Ben Johnson, and it was an unofficial visit, which you'll see from a lot of local kids, because they get 5 official visits, and then of course, if you're down to your decision, you want to visit officially with the school. But right now, they're going to keep most of the local kids will keep their 5 official visits and just visit Minnesota unofficially as much as they can. They know the campus, they know the coaches, but this is kind of the first time that Ben's been able to in person meet with Trey Holloman on campus and talk to him a little bit. And for the most part, for a lot of these coaches, it's been Zoom calls and phone calls and texts. So that was real important. And Trey Holloman was the first of quite a few that they'll have here this week.
You have a sense for where that relationship is with the Gophers and Trey Holloman? Is it too early, since, like you said, we've been in such a strange zone, and now they can finally start cultivating those relationships? But that would be a big early get, or early, someone to be in on. Maybe not quite the caliber of a Jalen Suggs, obviously, and those guys like that don't come along every year, even a Chet Holmgren. But this is a pretty good class depth wise, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. This is this class is probably one of the deepest. It may be the deepest. Since I've been covering the Gophers. When I say that, obviously you talked about Jalen Suggs, Chet Holmgren. It's not as top heavy. With those elite prospects as far as top 10, top 5 in the country, maybe one and done. NBA talent after their freshman year. But I think these are definitely kids that can come into a program and change the direction, especially if you get a couple of them. And Trey Holloman was one that I know Ben Johnson and his staff zeroed in on right away. You don't find point guards with his talent very often. Michigan State is heavy after him, and that's actually where he will take his first official visit this week on Thursday to Michigan State and Tom Izzo. And, there'll be quite a few other schools, I'm sure, get into the mix. He also told me he's visiting Marquette at the end of the month. But right now, I think Minnesota and Michigan State, Minnesota, because obviously it's the hometown school for him, but also because, he's had his eye on Minnesota, even under Richard Pitino. He was a high priority. So he knows a lot about the school. He knows a lot about, what they offer. There's not a lot he knows about Ben Johnson's system, philosophy, what his team will look like. And so those are the things that I'm sure Trey is interested in, as well as some of these other recruits. Wednesday, Braden Carrington from Park Center. He's a guard. He's more of a 2-guard or combo guard. Very good shooter in the class of 2022. He's visiting unofficially as well. And then on Thursday, a talent that really is a big-time sleeper, and you'll see him blow up this summer, is Demarion Watson-Salisbury from Tontino Grace. You look at the way that, a lot of these kids develop. Some of them, as far as Trey, he's been on the scene quite a long time. Demarion was 2 years ago was a bench player for Minnehaha Academy, and he transferred, and all of a sudden now he's one of the top kids in the state. And last summer didn't really get a chance to showcase himself too much because of the pandemic, but you'll see him rise in the rankings as well. So getting those 3 kids in this week, I think, was really important for Ben Johnson, even though they're unofficial visits, to get a chance to really build that relationship with them in person is huge for this class.
Those will be, potentially long-term relationships if those targets turn into recruits and signees and players. more immediately, like you alluded to earlier, the transfer portal is unbelievable for, especially, as it pertains to the Gophers. 10 in, 10 out. It's a totally different team, totally different roster, and maybe you can say not the worst thing in the world based on the fact that last year's team didn't find the success it wanted to. But where's the roster at right now? Are there imbalances? Are there still things they're looking to hopefully add in what certainly has become kind of college basketball and college sports version of free agency?
Yeah, you could say that's one of the reasons why Coach K maybe wants to get out of it. We didn't talk
Right.
about that yet, but the legendary Duke coach Mike Krzyzewski is retiring. I think that if you look at the landscape of college basketball right now, you see the way that things are changing. Not just during the pandemic when we didn't have an NCAA tournament, and then all of a sudden we did, and it was in a bubble basically in Indianapolis, in its entirety. That was different. I don't know how the NCAA tournament will move forward, but I know a lot of people were liking the fact that there's so many games tournament wise that were all in one location. But I'm talking about overall future of the game moving forward. There's a lot of things that happened during the pandemic that we're going to continue to see. One of them is the one-time transfer rule that was put into place, and which is allowing transfers to play right away in their first transfer. What that did this year was it really confused, I think, a lot of transfers in thinking, if they transferred once, twice, three times, that they would be able to play right away. They still have to go through the waiver process. And if you look at Minnesota's roster, there's quite a few of their players that have already transferred. Two of their top players, Marcus Carr, Liam Robbins, Brandon Johnson, those three players have already transferred. So they'll have to go through the waiver process. I think it'll be a little easier for them because Richard Pitino was fired. And, that's something that moving forward that you're going to see quite a bit. Coaches that were fired, players will get to play right away. But if you look at the transfer portal as a whole, a team like Minnesota losing, 10 players, you can't completely fill an entire competitive roster. I mean, it's really tough to do that in a year. And, Ben Johnson being a new coach, relationships that he's already had. He's a Minnesota guy, so you've seen quite a few of these players have Minnesota ties, which helps him. Peyton Willis was a player that already played for Minnesota once before he transferred, and now he's back. So I want to say at least half of these guys, have relationship with Ben Johnson or Minnesota already. So that really helped their situation. But, moving forward, it's going to be really hard to be competitive for any program to lose more than half your roster in a year and expect to compete. And, that's why I think, we talked about it to start off the podcast about high school recruiting. And I still think that's important. It's extremely important to build your program in high school recruiting because those are the kids that are picking your program from the start and that you probably have the long-term relationship with and the possibility of them staying long-term. Those are the ones you want to have to recruit and keep recruiting and keep in your program as opposed to just trying to build your roster with transfers every year because a lot of coaches are saying, hey, I might just ignore high school recruiting right now and focus on transfers because these guys are more developed and older. But, there's no relationship there long-term. And I think, the Gophers moving forward will focus more on high school recruiting than transfers.
Roster wise, I mean, like you said, a lot of new players coming in. A couple more things for you, Marcus Fuller, enjoying this college basketball conversation in the early June, not necessarily when I think about college basketball, but definitely an important time for the Gophers program as they think about, all these new players. And you said practice for them starts soon, right? In the matter of 10, 12 days, something like that, June 14th. Getting them on the court, what should we expect? As they start to get to know each other and try to build up for some semblance of a successful season next year.
Yeah, I'm curious myself because last year, we had a period there where quite a long period where they weren't even practicing, because of COVID. They obviously had to continue to test and make sure that when they came back from, their families and some of these guys, they were graduating and trying to transfer. They had to make sure they were safe and everything was safe on campus. And, they continued to not have full practices. I think at the time they limited the number of players that could, be together. It was mostly workouts. And so it was really just a strange off season. And, I was surprised at how competitive the Gophers were last year, not having any really much time to practice, not having preseason games, exhibition games. So all of that will be back this year. They'll join, like you said, in mid-June. They'll be able to practice right away. They can do scrimmages, 5-on-5. As I just talked about, they should have at least 10 players so they can go 5-on-5. They also added a couple walk-ons. One of them's from Minnesota, an Eastview product, and Jackson Purcell. But you talk about the roster a little bit. The only returning player is Isaiah Enan, a sophomore forward, a junior to be 6'9" forward, who's got a lot of potential. Still trying to tap into that. Some of the players that probably will be expected to lead right away. Peyton Willis, as I mentioned, he's a returner from a couple of years ago where he played for the Gophers, and he was a starting combo guard. Has a really good tight relationship with Eric Curry, who graduated, and he'll be a grad assistant. But Eric was a big man that played for 4 years here and had some injury issues, but definitely one of the most inspirational players that I've covered. And you'll see Peyton take that leadership role. He'll probably play a lot of point guard. They've got a couple guards transfers that they're really going to expect a lot from in Luke Lowy. He's from Wisconsin, but he played at William & Mary. And then also E.J. Stevens played at Lafayette. Those two guys have a lot of experience as well, and they'll come into the backcourt and help them a lot. And I'm excited about Jamison Battle, also a George Washington transfer. He's a De La Salle kid we've had on this show.
Yeah, we have.
This podcast. He was really great, talking about a lot of things other than basketball. And, he's going to add some shooting to the mix. Unfortunately, Parker Fox, another local kid, Matamidi kid, he tore his ACL, and, he'll be out 6 to 9 months, and I don't expect him back this year, but, if it's a shorter end of that recovery time, there's a possibility he could join them, a month or so into Big Ten play. But, I really don't expect that. I think that the best thing for him is probably to get healthy and get back fully healthy and maybe next year help them. So they need some big guys. I mentioned some guards, some perimeter threats, but they're still recruiting. Like I said, this is high school recruiting time, in-person recruiting, but they're still searching the transfer portal, trying to find that starting center. They've been really lucky here the last couple of years with Daniel Turu and Liam Robbins, two, all Big Ten caliber players and NBA prospects. And now that they'll have to, continue to find someone that can help them compete, in the front court.
Well, when he was hired, Ben Johnson was built up as a recruiter, as a relationship builder, and I guess this is the time for him to start bringing some of that to light here with the Gophers. Not a doubt that he can do it. To what extent is and how fast is probably the biggest questions. Marcus Fuller, thanks for joining Daily Delivery today. Great stuff. Always enjoy catching up on Gopher basketball. And let's do this again soon. Maybe we can grab a recruit or a target or two and have them on the show as well.
Yeah, by that time we'll have a recruit. We'll have some commitments here, hopefully.
Sounds good. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you.
Let's end things with the cooler. Like Marcus and I talked about, the transfer portal has completely and fundamentally changed college basketball, college sports, really. And Chip Scoggins had a column about that, to that effect, in Thursday's paper, StarTribune.com. He had some numbers in it that Marcus and I didn't talk about. Here's a paragraph from Chip's column. Here are rounded off totals for Division I athletes who entered the transfer portal this year. 2,400 in FBS level football, 2,770 in men's basketball, and 1,660 in women's basketball. That is a staggering number. Just the sheer volume of it. So many different athletes looking to change teams, change schools, change their situations. And I've talked about this on the show before. I like the portal. I like empowering athletes, but I think we're fooling ourselves if we don't acknowledge the fundamental change this will have in college sports, and just how this will change roster building, how this will change how teams are constructed going forward. It's going to be a whole different way of doing things, and we got to be ready for that in college sports. It's going to be more like free agency than it is anything else. That'll do it for today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hoping to have Tyler Dunn, who has covered the the Packers for quite some time. He now is kind of on his own, doing his own thing, covering the NFL, doing a great job doing it. Hoping to have him on Friday's show to talk NFL, to talk Aaron Rodgers, get his perspective on what's going on in Green Bay. Thanks for listening today. Please download this podcast, subscribe to this podcast, maybe even leave a review if you have the time. Always subscribe to Star Tribune, StarTribune.com, of course, and we'll see you again on Friday.